So this section will now be looking at women's inclusion. So turning to women's health, what specific inclusion challenges do you think that women face in poor environments that can affect mental well-being?
Yeah. Okay, I think they're manifold. I think some, as we touched on earlier, is there's still a disproportionately high number of men in the industry compared to women. I think that is obviously, and it's our industry and many others, but it's shaped the culture such that the tone of conversation is often about male oriented. It means the development of the working environment has often not been done. We work on a lot of older sites. The development of the working environment is often being done without women in mind and women involved in the conversation and the development of it. And I think that there's, I hate to overgeneralize because but there's still pockets of thinking that the important work is what happens out on the front line, where all the cranes and the heavy kit is, and the ships and all the rest of it, and that's mainly men, not 100%, but mainly men. And then all the menial jobs, admin and all that, that's all women can do that. There's still an element of that, pockets of it. To counter that, I do want to add that I think if you ask most people their views on it, I think they'd like to see it change, but I think we're still living with that legacy, and it's by no way completely been addressed. Just one other thing on inclusion. I think even the tone of conversation in a heavy industry is, it's heavy, very male dominated. So sometimes it can take take a lot of confidence for a woman to actually join that conversation, and especially to start leading a conversation or taking the conversation elsewhere, because it's male dominated themes that tend to dominate. Yeah, so that's, I think I should just say that I'm probably not the best person to be answering this question. I should have got some of our female colleagues to answer them, but I'll do my best.
No, I think it's interesting to hear from not just women themselves, but also from men within the industry, because it's quite important to get two perspectives. And I think it's quite interesting, as you said, because it does sort of go back to that question of why women aren't sort of inclined to join those sort of frontline operational roles. And I think that sort of all ties in together with inclusivity, and it does expand to the various roles, because even myself, when I'd first joined this sort of role as well, when you do think of ports, you do think of hard hats on, cargo lifting, but it's not that. There's so much more to it, so much more support that goes into an industry like this. So I think that all points that are very important to consider. So could you tell us a bit about the Women's Network at PD Ports and what role it plays in supporting mental health and inclusion?
Yeah, okay. I would say it was set up before my time here. I think it's a quite well supported group. I got a good insight into it when we ran a women's only listening session, and several representatives of the Women's Network were present there. I think it's a really good forum for inclusion, for giving women a voice, and maybe both allowing them to express things where they might not feel comfortable expressing them in a mixed gender forum, but also for raising specific issues. And one, I think you've got it in your question set, haven't you? On PPE is a good example where, and I've come across this in previous jobs as well, where it's hard to believe that in 2026, but there are still many companies are not providing suitable PPE for the women, and even a lot of suppliers have really failed to address this. PPE suppliers have failed to address this until recently. There are some good notable examples of companies that are, but yeah, it's been a real issue But I think the Women's Network was a forum where I think they could express concerns like that and do something about it. And they actually, it was, through their drive that we arranged a women's PPE day, and actually had a supplier come in with different options, people to try different options for PPE. And really positive day. So I think it's it's shown its real benefit in having a space for women to have these discussions and raise real good improvement ideas.
That's brilliant. And I think one of my questions was actually about the Women's PPE initiative or day that
Yeah.
was. So I think it's amazing that you sort of took that listening session and went beyond that and took the action, because there is,
Yeah.
I think, again, looking at the other perspective from a women's point of view, you are battling expectations or facilities made specifically for men, and having those sort of initiatives really help sort of debunk that and allow women to feel more included, whether that's with PPE or having those open discussions in the first place.
Yeah.
So what has the Women's PPE Day taught you about the link between practical inclusion and mental well-being?
Yeah. I think, it comes with whether it's, on the issue of PPE or any topics really. I think the fact that people are included, that now, they feel like their views are respected, that they're listened to, and where practicable are acted on. I think most people can accept that not every idea that we all have is going to get acted on, but at least it's heard, it's thought about, and you get some feedback on it. And I just think that's good for you as a human being. It's good. We don't want to feel isolated. We don't want to feel as though our opinions must be crazy because they don't seem to fit in round here. We want to feel heard and listened to, and at least be part of the conversation. And it's the more and more. I studied psychology many years ago, so I've forgotten most of it. But more and more, I'm coming to the view that good conversation it's not just about being nice and respectful to each other. It's how we keep each other well mentally. We can look after each other by talking with each other, and I know there's a lot more to it than that, but it's a big part of it for me. Is just being included and being part of the conversation. Yeah. And as you touched, sorry, Umayya, I was just going to say,
Please do.
as you touched on it, because historically it's been such a male-dominated industry, you can see why there is the case, and I'm sure each workplace will find its own way, but certainly in a big company like PD Ports, you can see why there's a space and a need for women's only forums, certainly to start that inclusion process and develop it, and then take things from there. So yeah, sorry for jumping in there. Yeah,
absolutely fine. Thank you so much. I think that's such an important thing to say as well.
yeah.
I think particularly for women who just joined the industry, as well as women who have spent years, have years of experience in the industry, I think these are really important things that need to be considered in the first place. Which leads me to my closing question. Doesn't have to be specifically around women's inclusion or men's mental health particularly, but can you give a real example of a small change that had a real big impact in relation to EDI principles?
Yeah, I think I'm going to. It's probably because it's quite recent in my memory, because I was just there last week. But we have a site down in the southeast of England, at Felixstowe. And my first visit there was back in last summer when I was new to the company. But I went to a workplace and this was before the listening sessions and so on. I went to a workplace that was by no means all bad, and I met some very nice people there. But there seemed to be a complete disconnect between the management team and the workforce out in the warehouses. the conversation was a bit difficult out in the warehouses. People seemed shy, reluctant to speak, and so on. And they'd had some safety issues last year, some safety incidents, behaviour issues, and equipment issues. And I'm not now. I don't want to imply that it's just down to the listening sessions, because other good work has been done to re-engage the workforce. But I do believe the listening sessions are a big part, because I've been there. Went in December for the listening sessions, and then I've been there twice since this year. And even just last week, I met operators who were reluctant to even speak with me when I'm on my first visit, who actually sought me out and came to speak to me, wanted to show me the safety improvements they've made in their warehouse in terms of pedestrian safety from forklift truck routes and so on. Screening to protect them from poor weather conditions and so on. They've come up with themselves, they volunteered them, and now as well as going to the local management team, they're keen to see me when I visit and talk about these safety things. And I honestly think a big thing, but it was only a small thing that you had to do, was just give them the opportunity and say, let's listen to what you have to say. And once you open that door, it's created, and I'm not, lots of work to do still, and I'm not a dreamer, but always lots more to do. But there's changes I've seen in quite a short time by many operators who are all now feeling part of the conversation. So I think it's a quite small step, really, just to say, I just want to hear your views, hear what you think about safety. How do you feel involved? And then keep that up. And the rewards a company can get from it are great. Yeah.
And I think it again looks at, you have these brilliant initiatives, but even taking small steps like having a conversation and simply listening and being aware of people's different perspectives can really bring so much, can benefit them and their mental well-being, but also benefit the company as a whole.
Yeah, and I should. Sorry, I'll just briefly. I know we've run over, but I should add a particular feature of our Startup Felix store is it is a very multinational workforce. Lots of people from different parts of the world. We've got Eastern European people. We've got people from South America, people from Africa. And I think because there's been a bit of a lack of engagement, but I think there was some on some people's part a reluctance because there's a lot of different levels of English speaking proficiency, as well as different accents to manage and so on. But once you sit and have these conversations with these people, one of the greatest examples of safety improvement was a woman she's from Brazil. And she hadn't been really engaged on safety. But once we started the conversation, I've learned that she's qualified in psychology. She's got great experience. She's highly intelligent. Her safety improvement proposal was written like a professional. And you look at the untapped ability that we have amongst these people, and you only find it out once you start talking with them, So I think it's been a real eye opener for lots of people that stop just calling them the workforce and go and meet them and get to know them.
That's brilliant. I couldn't agree more. And it's a perfect closing statement. So thank you so much for your time. I will now stop the recording. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Umayya. I've enjoyed